Hello everyone, and good morning. and Today I'm going to be doing a much more relaxed approach initially. Let's see how that goes. So, I want to talk about race today. Race. And in my psychology classes, there's quite some interesting things about race. And I had a professor who studied specifically in her work um, about racial biases, discrimination, let's say the science behind that, what they know so far, and she's doing new research on that. And one thing that was interesting was how there's this unconscious, well, it's called unconscious, like in my words, it's like sorting out or categorizing of people. Where, for example, we think of like racism, right? We're thinking that one person is thinking another, let's say, certain race, certain appearance of people to be a certain way. But if I were to use examples such as if you see someone who looks very dirty, or you see someone who looks like his eyes are very low, or you see someone who has like a chiseled jaw and like super strong muscles, or you see a woman who's very thin and big breasts and big butts, or if you see someone who is wearing a very expensive suit and tie, or you see someone wearing a hoodie and have really big baggy jeans, or you see someone wearing a Canadian leaf sweater. Chances are you're going to be thinking something about that person simply based on how they look. And this happens automatically, right? Was there ever a time period in your whole entire life where you had decided that for the first time you're going to look at someone, have thoughts about them based on how they look, and act on those thoughts, believe those thoughts, and treat the person based on what you think? Really, have you ever made that decision? No, it really just happened sort of automatically one day, right? And as a kid, you just did it, and you saw that other adults were doing it, other kids were doing it, and so you just did it as well. But really, what's going on? How does this work? It is something that you could say is unconscious, something you just do. And they've sort of shown this within some psychology studies. For example, if you look at race specifically, if you look at someone, you have certain ideas about them based on information about that race you have within you. Such as if, for example, let's say you don't have any black friends. You don't have any whatsoever. You never met a black person. And all you've seen is based on movies and TV shows. So naturally, you're going to have thoughts about black people based on things you've seen on TV shows and in movies. Same thing too if you see only the news and you see, let's say, black people but as criminals because they're being shown in the news, because that's what gets shown in the news. There's a lot of crime stories. You're going to have those ideas because of that as well. But if you grew up around, let's say, black people, you had black friends, you got to know a lot of different black people, then there's actually been studies that shown that if you take someone who is, let's say, white, and they grew up in a black neighborhood, black school, black everything, they would be able to actually tell the difference, even that basic point, between people, between black people. And that's a very interesting fact to consider yourself, because let's say you're black or American, whatever. You look at someone who's, let's say, Chinese. To you, everyone who's Chinese looks alike, right? If you look on the news or look on pictures of China, you really can't tell the difference. And that's the same thing they've shown with lots of things, including different races, where it's like, why is that? Why can't we tell the difference between, let's say, black people if we're white, or if we're black, why can't we tell the difference between white people if we only knew, black people, or whatever race or whatever situation, where we just see everyone as the same. And that's because basically within science it shows that we don't have the experience, we haven't spent the time to be able to tell the difference, to be able to see differences, to see the details. That's a common sense point, and that's what they've shown in studies. In cases where a certain person from a certain race grew up in another race, they could show that they were able to tell the difference, and people who didn't weren't able to tell the difference. So it's really much that basic point. It's just about our experience, our history, what we've learned, what we've seen, what we've paid attention to, what we've been exposed to. And the same thing too with anything else. If you look at any other category, like people with big muscles, or people who are, let's say, handsome, or people who are really thin, or really big, or really whatever, or people who dress a certain way, like really fancy clothes. It's like we have these ideas, perceptions already, these categories. Just imagine like little boxes in your mind. You have like a box. These little boxes in your mind, which have these categories, these labels, and that's where you store your information into. And that's how you act and respond accordingly. And these include whatever information, because to the brain, to the mind, to you, on an unconscious level, there's no such thing as good or bad. There's no such thing as this information here about this person is a good information, and this information here is about this person is bad information. When it comes to storing the information, it just stores it. You could say indiscriminately. So if you had this information of violence and you associate that to a black person, the information is going to be stored there based on the information you were exposed to and you paid attention to. The same thing if it's information of beauty and you attach it to a white person, for example. That's what you attach it to. It's not about good or bad, it's just what information is in the environment. If things were reversed, the brain, the body, the mind would have stored information just as the same. Because to the brain, to the mind, it's just information. Then afterwards, when we process the information, deal with it, then we put ourselves onto it, but only after it sort of is already within us, and then we say what's good or bad. But the thing is, we're not being aware of our unconscious levels. What we're actually doing, which is happening at a fast rate, much faster than we're aware of. And that's how everything happens. That's how we end up with racism. That's how we end up with police shootings. And here's another context we have to consider is when you're a police officer, you have to make decisions about who is a criminal. When you're on the street and you receive a description of a criminal on the street who recently fled a crime scene, you have to look on the streets and make a determination. And the thing is, if, for example, you're white and you didn't have any black friends, you didn't grow up around black people, of course all black people are going to look the same to you. And then you can actually be trained, potentially, by just simply being exposed to different faces and getting to know black people. And you'll be able to tell the difference between facial structures, between how they look, between how they act. Same thing too with criminals. And here's another problem. If you have criminals who, let's say, are in a gang, who dress the same, who look the same, who act the same, and you have other people on the street who also look the same, act the same, because they think it's cool, because being a gangster is cool, then of course police officers are going to get confused between them and them. So there's another point too, based off how criminals act, how they look. So I mean, if you're on the street and you have to make a decision, you're gonna make it as fast as possible, and the fastest part of your brain is the unconscious part of your brain. It's the information that's most direct, and in a way, you could say it's the information that's most stupid because it simply goes, it simply acts, it simply reacts, it simply is. It's not a place where you can actually spend time thinking about it and processing information and deciding. No, it just is. It's just whatever information is stored within you. And this is how the unconscious mind works. And this isn't something taught within elementary schools, middle schools, or high schools. This is only something I learned in college, in higher education. Only after you're 18 years old, 19, 20 years old. I mean, this should be taught on a basic fundamental education level, but it's not. That the fact that we have unconscious minds, the fact that this is known to at least a good enough degree where we can say that, yeah, it exists, and yeah, this is happening this way. And for me, if we make that simple adjust within a generation, that could already make a big shift. Where the new generations, if they're taught that within school about how what psychology knows so far, the very basics of it, yeah, it can change how people think. It changes how people approach learning, where they actually try to learn on the more unconscious parts of themselves, where they actually store information, memorize it. There could be a whole different approach. And this includes things about sleeping habits, eating habits as well. So race. Really, race becomes a point of appearance. And beyond appearance, we can only go beyond that once we get to know people. And after appearance, race becomes just race, just a physical genetic thing. And besides race, you have culture. But culture isn't attached to race. Culture can be something that is developed outside of race, so it's not attached to it. Yeah, there could be some similarities and associations where there is a time period where it's the same, but it's not necessary. It's not a necessity. It's not an absolute truth. And of course, money and crime is an obvious association to race. Certain races do have more money, so we have that association. And that's going to be part of the solution, is actually make sure people have equal money. And that's really the only way to really make sure that no one has an idea about that race has more money than that race. And that race is better because they have more money. Okay. I'll end it here. There's a lot of scientific information. These are very interesting studies. You can Google this. Psychology studies on race, psychology studies on racial discrimination, racial biases. They do lab studies where they take photos of different people and they see what associations people have to them. It's really interesting, and it works on the unconscious part of the brain because it has to do with flashing, which is interesting, where they flash certain faces really quickly. And yeah, so this is being used right now, and so look at it, check it out. It's really interesting. Bye everyone, thanks for watching.